Hello and welcome back to the She Can Ball podcast. I'm your host, Mahi Jariwala, and I'm here today with the Assistant Player Development Coach at William Jessup University, Coach Tet. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks, Maya. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Okay, so let's just get right into it. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into basketball.
Wow. So I'll give you the condensed version because the long version might take us more than I think you have time for. But basically, in high school, I didn't play my senior year. And the big thing for me was what did I want to do with my life, right? And most seniors, especially nowadays, they're kind of going through that. What do they want to do with their life? And so for me at the time, I liked basketball and I loved it, but I had been around it since I was 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Being 17, I was just like, you know what, let me try something different.
Mm-hmm.
So I went ahead and tried dancing. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I didn't think that I could do both dancing and basketball, but I just put all my heart and soul into that, and I loved it. Did it for 2 years, and then, I didn't play my first year of community college, and I was kind of in a situation where I wanted to play the game, but I wanted to play it because I loved it, not because I had to.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing players go by me and seeing players score on me, I kind of brought something out of me that I think, was in me for the last 12 years. And so I started taking it a little bit more serious, and I started going back at people. And really through that 16-week class, the coach saw me go from a guy who was kind of just out there playing to somebody who was really competing. And so he decided to ask me to sign up for his summer class because he wanted me to play for him. So I said, sure, why not? I'd never been through the recruiting process. I wasn't talked to by anybody in high school. And so I was just like, you know what, let me try it out. And I did the whole thing. I went to every single day to the practices and whether with their practice, it was more of a class, but yeah, weights as well. That was required.
And so were you playing for the junior college league or?
The community colleges, they have typically what they'll have is for incoming freshmen, you can take the basketball class and also the weightlifting classes. And typically you'll get a bunch of basketball players in there. It's open to anybody, but there's prospects that they're looking at as well. And so I signed up for that, and much like a bunch of other guys were signing up for that as well, and ended up getting an opportunity to play after that summertime. Yeah, and I ended up playing JUCO for 1 year. After that, I was like, you know what? It was a great season. I learned a lot, but I went from playing and starting to not playing very much to being a support role, being on the bench, high-fiving guys, killing guys in practice, but being a supporter on the bench, and kind of accepting my responsibilities as a team player. And I mean, the hardest thing for me to kind of get with some of these people, what framed my coaching is that everybody has a role and everybody has a job. And so, yeah. And so, if you want to win, you want to be the best at your role, regardless of what it is. And so you just can't do everything. You can't play 40 minutes a game. You can't do what all five people do. So the better you are at what you do, the easier the game becomes, And so, so I did that for a year. I didn't play the next year. I wasn't done with it, but I just kind of was like, you know what, that was good. I had fun. But I kind of want to do something else, And so I didn't play for 4 years, and then I played with a pastor that I went at the church I was going to, and he was like, "You're really good." And mind you, I hadn't played in 4 years, right? Like competitively. So he said, "Well, are you done with school? And what are you doing? Where did you play?" And I was like, "Well, no, actually, I'm not done with school, and I am looking to still play if it's an opportunity, And so he made a phone call for me, and ended up playing at Bethany University. And so that's where I graduated from in Santa Cruz. And, the rest is kind of taking it from there. I mean, just the opportunities that I got by taking a kind of like a jump to go somewhere after not playing for 4 years was the best decision of my life. Because I can tell you this much, and I think I'd said this before to you, like I would never have met you if I would have, quit.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I'm at today. And fortunately, I've been blessed over the years for coaches to say yes and give me opportunities. A lot of things worked out in my favor, and so I'm super blessed to be at William Jessup working with the players and developing them. And then, as a I guess you can call it a side gig, is trying to take what I've learned at each one of these levels and give it back to the younger generations. And so that's where Coach Tet, the whole brand of Coach Tet and the training aspect has came into place. And I just try to take what I learned and give it back to young women, and really look to find women in power to empower the other women. Yeah. So that's kind of been my motto.
And so was there someone that you looked up to?
That I looked up to? That's a great question. I mean, my mother, was the strongest woman I ever knew. So like a lot of people ask why I even got into women's basketball, and I would say it's because of my mom. I mean, she raised me by herself from 4 years old all the way, up until now. And it was a testament really to her leadership. I've never seen the woman shed a tear, make an excuse. And being a single mom, it's very difficult, especially raising young men, to not be mom and dad. She was just, I'm going to be mom, and I'm going to be the best mom that I can be. And so she, as I call her alpha woman, that's all I was used to my whole life, and so it's only natural that I kind of went into coaching women's basketball, because that's like what I've dealt with my whole life. And I work well with other women who are trying to strive to be their best and don't make excuses. And so that would be the person I looked up to the most. Now, as far as in basketball, in particular, I mean, I loved Phil Jackson. That was like, perfect timing with The Last Dance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love Phil Jackson. I love his leadership style. He never got in the way of the people being the best versions of himself. But at the same time, he didn't want to forsake the goals of the team, and everybody wants to win a championship. And so you have to invest something with that. And so he said, don't change who you are, because who you are is what made you, and it makes actually our team better by being who you are. What I'm asking is that you invest who you are into what we do. And so that made everybody keep their identity of being the best versions of themselves, but yet at the same time, be able to give everything they could on the court. And I love that. I tell kids now, don't change who you are. That is who you are. That's who you became. You don't have to conform, but invest who you are into this, because that's what makes this journey amazing. And so, that's the two people that I would say I looked up to the most.
You talked about trying to figure yourself out in your senior year and then not playing that much when you're in junior college. But what were some other obstacles you had to overcome?
Yeah, two things really kind of shaped my life. The first thing was, again, playing in community college. I started in our first tournament. I earned my way there, and I remember one night after I had a very bad game. I want to say it was either my first game or second game. I don't. My memory fades, but I went to the coach's room and I knocked on the door and I said, "Coaches, can I talk to you guys?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure. What's up?" I'm sure they were thinking like, "Oh, I'm gonna talk about strategy or whatever." And I was like, "Hey, I messed up. I feel like I lost the game for the guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm not really feeling that too much. Maybe it would be better suited if I came off the bench, right? Like,
yeah,
maybe I'm not meant to start. I know I'm meant to play, but I may not be meant to start." Right?
Wow, that definitely takes lots of guts to go and say that to your coach, and it really shows that you're putting the team first.
Yeah, and for me, that's all I knew, right? Because my mom was always like, speak about what you're feeling, And so I went there and said that, and I left, and they had a kind of a puzzled look, like this guy is saying he doesn't want to start. Like that's everybody's dream, you know what I mean? And they're like, okay, fine, like if that's what you want to do. So they had to figure out a new starting person. I think I started the next game. I think they told me like, hey, let's start the next game, see kind of what happens, and then after that, you kind of feel the same, then come tell us, And so, I mean, I'm like, all right, cool. And so to me, it was like I've been out for 2 years. You know, I didn't feel I was ready, and so like that was one of the changing moments for me. It was that I was honest with myself, saying, you know what, maybe I wasn't meant to be a starter. But what ended up happening is I was still killing in practice, still doing what I was supposed to do. But those, what began to happen is, he saw more and more use for other people versus finding more and more use for me, which is rightly so. And in fact, those guys outworked me. You know what I mean? They provided more value for the team than I did because I was turning the ball over at such a high rate, So coaching wise, it made a lot of sense. And so, basically I learned and I grew from that tremendously. And I said, being honest with yourself, regardless of the outcome, is something that's necessary. It hurt at the time that I had to do that. And a lot of people would be looking back and say that would be the wrong decision. But I was okay with that because I knew that was my truth. And I needed to tell the coaches that versus trying to pretend and not giving us the opportunity to win. And so for me, it was more about being that team player.
Right.
And then the second one was after my first year playing at 4 year. Now, mind you, I was not playing for 4 years. Like I worked full-time jobs. I was making money. Like I was good. I didn't need to go back to school. Right.
Yeah.
But I ended up going back in my first semester there, getting used to one, living in a different location, and then two, having to go to class. Like I had 4 years without going to class. Was a new experience for me for sure. And so I struggled big time. I was I think point zero three grade points away from being eligible. And so I had a 1.97 or 1.96, I believe, or something like that. So I was barely ineligible, right? So I was put on academic probation. I couldn't play. I had under 2.0, so I didn't have the grades necessary, right, to uphold the standard, to play. And so that was hard for me. But I called a friend of mine just, to like lick my wounds and all on, woe is me. And she cussed me out so smooth. And she was like, don't you ever call me about some, stuff that you did that you had control over, right? And she was like, if you come back to, and at the time I was living in Santa Cruz, I lived in Sacramento. She's like, if you come back and you don't have your degree, we're not gonna be friends anymore. And I was like, wow. That was intense, She's like, I don't want to be associated with people who aren't trying to be the best versions of themselves, And so I thank her every day for doing that because that amongst me getting my coaches upset at me, but like my friends were just like, oh, it'll be okay, you'll bounce back, and she was telling me the truth, and that's what I needed at the time. And so like again, kind of with the theme of having very strong women around me, that was a cool thing. That she straight up said to me. She's like, no, man, that's not okay. Get the job done. So that next semester I had a 3.2 and I took care of it. So yeah, I went from that to a 3.2. And so like I had the motivation at that point to move. And so I overcame both of those situations with strong women who were, just basically told me straight up, like, no, this is the truth about it.
So how did you end up coaching women's basketball at William Jessup?
So yeah, the kind of the story is crazy. In 2011, our school at Bethany had shut down, and we had some girls who were going to be seniors plus some underclassmen, and they were looking for a home. And William Jessup was actually taking students who from our school that shut down and admitting them to Jessup, and athletes as well.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so we had a lot of young ladies who transferred up there, and they were, at the time, the coach that was there, they were telling them like, hey, there's this guy that he was our assistant coach, like we really, really liked him and appreciated him, like we think he can help out at Jessup, in whatever capacity. They didn't know, but they were just like, hey, he should come up here and help. And I appreciate that, and I was flattered, but I also understood like it's not 100% possible in a small college to just, hey, we're going to hire a new coach and that's it. It's like there's other things that come with it. You probably have to have a job up there and a bunch of stuff, right? So it didn't work out that time, but in 2011, like I said, I really wanted to come up there and come up to Jessup and help. And I always watched Jessup from afar and saw how they were growing and would love to have been a part of what they were trying to do. And plus, it was from my hometown, so I wanted to go back and be a part. Well, fast forward to 2014, I was married at the time, and we were getting ready to move up to Sacramento. And they had went through a coaching change, and so I was like, oh, maybe this might be a good time for me to try to jump in and see if I could help. And it didn't work out. The timing wasn't right again. But I ended up getting at Pacific Union College, and so they were in Napa, and we played them twice a year. And plus, I had players that still were playing at Jessup that I kept up with, and so went to go watch them play. Watch the tournament. I was always at Jessup's games, just being around a lot, but never really talking with the coaching staff and stuff like that. And so what ended up happening was 2 years ago, a young lady that I'm really close friends with, Liz Gayweiler, her story is amazing. And hopefully at some point you'll get a chance to get her on your podcast.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I was working with her. She went to Sierra College in Rockland, and which is like 5 minutes from Jessup. And I had known her for 3 years. And so we had coached together, and, we had been around each other for a long time. And she was at an open gym, or no, a practice, I'm sorry, where I had, older girls come in and scrimmage my high school club team.
Okay. And you were coaching high school at that time?
Yes. Wow. Yes. And actually, I still am coaching high school club, which is kind of cool. Like I can still keep somewhat of a foot in that side of things. And so she was at the open gym, or at the practice. And then so was the William Jessup assistant coach, because I ended up getting her number from one of the players that was at Jessup and say, oh yeah, she can still play and she can keep up, and it'd be good for her to come and play. And so I said, all right, cool. Like, hit her up, and she came. Well, Liz, she was like, hey, I got a couple of years of eligibility, because everybody else was sharing their story. She's like, I got a couple of years of eligibility. I'm trying to figure out where I want to play and stuff like that. And so, she's just kind of sharing her story. And then the assistant coach, her ears perked up like super quick. And she was like, wait a minute, you have years of eligibility? Let me get your number, And so literally the rest was there. And Liz vouched for me. She was like, I've known him. I trust him. He can help you guys out if you guys are looking for something. Mm-hmm. And again, I was at Pacific Union at the time, but trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because I was going to be on year 5, and I was making that drive an hour and 45 minutes away. So I was like, man, I can't keep doing this. You know what I mean? True. And so, it was a lot, but I understood I need to do it in order to keep myself in the women's game and at the collegiate level, and use it as a platform to help other young women. So, I was willing to make that investment. And so, so she spoke highly of me, and then they did their research, and they found out that other people, like they spoke highly of me. And so they gave me a call and said, hey, we are looking to add a couple more positions, for assistant coaches. And they said, hey, just give us a choice, or, come in for let's talk.
And what year was this?
It was 2018.
Wow, you've been wanting that job for 7 years.
Summer of 2018. Yes. Yeah, and so now I'm on my 3rd year there, and we're gonna, we're trying to win a national championship every year. But really, what we're trying to do is graduate young women and empower them to be in the community and help other young women do the same. So it's been great. I'm blessed for the opportunity, and every day that goes by, I look at it, I'm like, man, I'm really coaching college basketball as a career. Like that, most people don't get a chance to do that, So.
Wow, I mean, that's really great that now you have the job that you've been wanting for such a long time. And so take me through a day in your life, like not in quarantine, but normally speaking.
Yeah. So, there's a lot more. It's a funny thing, because most players, when they get into coaching, I guess they don't realize all the stuff that goes into it. Right. And rightfully so. I was the exact same way. I was fortunate when I first started coaching in 2011. 2009, I should say. on the women's side, because that's where after I finished my eligibility basketball wise, I started coaching at Bethany. And so I did that for 2 years. And so I learned that, 99% of your job is administrative. Only 1% of it is on the court, right? So think about it. Like, somebody has to coordinate when you're traveling where you're going. Somebody has to coordinate the referees. Somebody has to coordinate the yeah, like we have there's people who do assigning and stuff like that, so that helps us outsource, some of the
Mhm.
responsibilities. But and we have an athletic department that takes care of a lot of like travel and all that other stuff. But like as far as getting a team, communicating with teachers and professors, making sure like everybody's compliant with everything, like we have to monitor a lot of that stuff. And knowing when practice times are, like making sure everybody's on the same page, because like we share a gym with two other sports, with men's basketball, with volleyball. We'll this year with stunt, so we have a stunt team. We'll have a JV volleyball team, so and a JV women's basketball team. So there's a lot of sports.
Yeah, I mean, when I did my camp there was only like one main basketball court. I think there were a few hoops in the warehouse, but yeah.
Yep, yep. Yeah, and so coordinating all that, like you're spending a lot of time either on a phone, texting, or on a computer, like getting recruits. I mean, I get emails, and I'm kind of lowest on the totem pole as far as at Jessup. I get emails, at least 15, 20 emails a day of kids who class of 2020, class of 21, and so now you're watching film on stuff. So I can only imagine what the head coaches and the other assistant coaches from all the other schools in the nation are getting the same exact thing, having to watch film. So that's a lot of it, like choosing the best fit for you. And we're not Division One where you're only going after 3 or 4 kids that are ESPN top 100. Like we are finding a lot of people and sifting through a
Yeah,
lot of
that's
people to try to find what fits best for our
yeah.
school. So a lot of it's administrative, you know what I mean? I would say on the back end. And when I came into this whole thing, I was just on the court doing a lot of stuff. I had nothing to worry about on the back end. But now I've gotten kind of more of a role and responsibility. There's way more admin work. But I love every minute of it because like I never had to do it before. And then I never had to put things and put systems in place. So most of my day is waking up, 6 o'clock. I spend some time with my wife. My son normally comes into the room and he'll jump on us or do whatever. He's 4, so I kind of expect that to happen. Yeah. I'll get up. I'll probably about 7:30. Sometimes close to 8, depending on how I'm feeling. I'll make breakfast for the family and kind of spend some time with him. I've been trying to work on like going out with him and just getting outside and doing something just with him, because when you're starting to do coaching, you're responsible for the 15 to 20 people that you coach. And so you have to give a lot of your time to manage that. But I try to give him his time as well. So after I get, spend some time with him around 10 o'clock, I start looking at emails and start making phone calls and sending information out and connecting with recruits and developing relationships with them. For probably a good, 3 to 4 hours, I'm doing that. And then I'll take a break normally and try to eat some lunch, or like a late lunch sometimes, or I'll eat lunch while I'm doing whatever. And a lot of times when I'm outside, I'll get outside the house or outside the office and I'll just walk around, but I'm still like on the phone and talking with people, but it's just change of scenery a lot of times, but yeah, I take a break and see on Instagram or my Twitter and try to like keep up with my brand stuff. And I'll spend about an hour or two on that. And then I'll get back into, the evening, and I'm typically either with my club team doing some stuff with them, or I get an hour or so of training in, like working with players on getting better. And then in the evening, I'll kind of wind down with some more recruiting stuff and looking at more film and things like that. I mean, a lot of this in the off season, especially, is just recruiting. And it's really through the whole year, but we spend a lot of time on recruiting for classes that are 2 or 3 years out sometimes, so that we can kind of get ahead of the curve and follow them, and see what kind of how they progress. So that's typically like Monday through Friday. I typically go a little bit more because I have Saturday and Sunday. I'm doing my I officiate as well, so I'll get out and officiate and see who's out there. And and or I'm coaching a team.
Wow, so lots of basketball.
Yeah, so it's pretty. It can get pretty hectic, but yeah, that's my world, and that was my mission at 14. I just wanted to be in the game for my whole life, so that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. And so when are the William Jessup practices?
Yeah, so we're in a situation which is interesting. Most schools, or at least like when you get past the small schools, they have priority registration, right? Like D2 and D1s and stuff like that. Like they can choose when they're going to have their classes. Their practices are pretty set. Like this is when you're going to practice. This is when you're going to train, all that stuff. And they have 30,000 students in which they can accommodate like any time frame, you know what I mean? And so we just don't have that. We're a smaller school. We're under 2,000 people. So, classes are kind of, whatever the classes can become available. And so we try to keep that window between 4 and 8 o'clock open so we can have practice. So either we're going 4 to 6, 5 to 7, or 6 to 8. We very rarely want to do anything at night, but we try to keep that window open. What sometimes happens, again, when you're doing it in the fall time, you have different sports in there. So you have to work around the sport that's in season. They have the priority. But we just basically have that window. And then we'll do trainings with like the weight room and everything. And we'll put them in small groups. And so based on their time slots of when they can all work out, we'll put them either in the morning time or in the afternoon. We give them a break before practice typically, but that's typically how the small groups will work out. And then we'll do like a group workout together once a week, or sometimes twice a week, depending on what part of the season we're in. But they have their individual groups that they work with, and then they have their the groups that we work with as far as the whole team. So that's kind of like how we organize that. But I mean, and then we'll have film, but early in the season, there's typically no film unless we're covering what we're going to cover, like as far as teaching points and stuff. But I mean, a lot of that just is basically, we'll practice between 4 to 8, and then we'll have our weightlifting groups. Typically, they'll be either in the morning or in the early afternoon before practice, depending on what day it is. So,
Wow. And you are doing so much for our women's basketball community. And my question to you is, why do you feel so strongly about elevating women's basketball? You talked about growing up with strong females, but was there a certain reason that you wanted to get involved in the women's game?
yeah. So in 2006, it was my first experience with the WNBA, and that was one of the things that changed my whole life. I was blessed to have my coach who was coaching me in college. Is before I got to Bethany, and he basically reached out. He wanted to make sure I was ready before I came in. He reached out to a friend of his, and said, "Hey, I know that the WNBA teams have male players as their scout team. Can you throw him on the list? He's my point guard coming in. I need him to kind of, get ready to come in." And so he reached out to me. His name is Michael Laurente. He's actually a coach at my alma mater at American River College. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey man, the Sacramento Monarchs are looking for, players, and I can send your name to the assistant coach. Would you be interested? Here's kind of the framework." And so I said, sure. And so the only thing was that they can only do it in the middle of the day, because they practice a lot of times from like 11 to 2 or from 12 to 3 or something like that. So everything was in the middle of the day. And at the time I was working full time, right? So I was fortunate to have my supervisor. He was like, "Yeah, man, take off lunch and then come back. You know what I mean? Whenever you're done with it."
Good.
Yeah, he was really cool. He's instrumental in that too. And he signed off on me doing that. So yeah, just as long as you're 8 hours, you could work a split day, no problem. So I would come in early in the morning from 6 to like noon, and then I would leave, go, play with the Monarchs for an hour or two, or depending on when they needed me. And then I would come back and finish the rest of my work day, So he was really instrumental in that. And I still call him and thank him to this day. He's still at the place that I worked. And so I thank him every single day. And he's like, "Dude, you don't have to." I said, "Yes, I do. Because if you didn't let me do that, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I can promise you, So Doing that, seeing the professional women's basketball players play and compete and work on their game, that was the most competitive practices and the most competitive environment I've ever been a part of. It was high energy every single time I went in there. They were talking the whole time. The gym was loud. It was like it was mandatory,
Mhm.
and I learned about the women's side, especially elite women's basketball, uh, at that in 2006, and I went back in 2007 after my first year of playing. I went back and I still did it because I was like, yeah, I love that experience. It was great. I need to have that again. And so I was blessed to have that, and actually some of the women I still keep in contact with that played on the Monarchs, and it's just been a great for me, it's been a great tool to be able to take back. So that's really I wanted to bring that back. I really wanted to bring what I saw there every single day back to the women's game because there were so many people who thought women's basketball wasn't very competitive, wasn't good. They thought that it was just kind of like stand in the corner and shoot all the time, that they don't compete, that they don't talk crap to each other, that they just hold hands and skip
Yeah.
down the street. Like I didn't think that I didn't think that because
Mhm.
I've been around it, but I like there has to be something that the pros are doing that we're not doing at the high school and college levels. And so and seeing that I was like, oh yeah, I since I saw that, I have to bring that back, and I have to show people like, no, you can be great, and you don't have to apologize for that. You don't have to fit the norm what everybody else thinks in society. You can go out there and compete, talk crap, enjoy it,
Exactly.
laugh, have fun. You know, you could do all that stuff and be a very strong woman. It just fell in line with what I already seen with my mom, how strong she was. And I was like, okay, if this is what it is, I need to find a way to empower these women to know that yes, you can be competitive. Yes, you can, try to dominate your competitor.
Yes, I mean, there's lots of trash talking that goes on in pickup games and practices, but it doesn't happen as much in games, which I really wish it did.
Yeah, and it's a part of the game too. Like once you get to a point in basketball or in any sport where you achieved mastery, and so you understand what you're going to do, how you're going to do it,
Mhm.
and when you're going to do it. You have to find those little opportunities to get the mental edge over people, and that's that game within a game. That there's that gamesmanship that I think that people miss out on, and that's when you can do it and still back up what you're
Yeah.
about to do. That's the ultimate, you know what I mean? And that's what makes the game fun. And I think a lot of people miss out on that. And that's what we enjoy a lot more. And you see it in, pickup games a lot. The game may not be fast and it may not be up and down, but there's so much talking back and forth that you're bringing the best out of somebody. It's like, no, I'm gonna
Yeah.
prove to you, you know what I mean? And you're telling that person, no, you better prove to me that you're better than what I see because you're not giving me your best. I really think that's the framework is like, no, I want to see your best. Don't give me a half of it. Give me everything. So I like it. If I see it in practice, I encourage it. I'm like, yeah, back it up though. Like don't say it and then not be able to back it up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then it's an emotional response. You better say something and be able to back it up, and then bring everybody else up after that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's the ultimate. So
Definitely. And so, what do you think needs to be done in order for women's basketball to gain the respect that it deserves?
yeah, I think there's a couple things that's already happening. Young ladies like you're speaking on behalf of it. I told somebody that watch the ages 8 through 13 is going to be a super increase in people playing more and a viewership of the women's game. You guys are shouting out other women's basketball players like this. You guys are getting in front of a lot of people at an early age, and this is really, really good. This is kind of the same swing that started happening in the men's game about 20 years ago. And so I'm seeing this in the women's games now, and I'm like, it's going to be crazy by the time you guys get to where you're of age. And so I think the biggest thing is keep doing stuff like this. I mean, it's a marathon, so we have to continue to stay the course. My mission is to find other men to to be able to support the women's game. How I'm doing it, where it's like let's let's show let's show the positive sides of the women's game and show that we are in support of it and that we're getting out of their way. You know what I mean? And so we want them to be the best version of themselves. We are guests in your guys' game, and as guests we should act as such. And so we got to really do our job at giving you guys the freedom and encouraging, all the competitiveness that you guys have inside of you to be the best versions of yourself. So that's one. Two, I think just continuing, like I've been fortunate to be able to put clips on my social page consistently. Other guys have to do the exact same thing, and other girls have to do the exact same thing. Find out who your favorite college player, your favorite high school player are, and really be talking about them and have a regular conversation with other women, because I've been on teams before where coaching where I said, who's your favorite WNBA player, and they didn't even know the WNBA existed, or they don't even have a player that they like that's a women's basketball player, right? And so I said that's what breaks my heart, is that me as a male that I know more about your sport.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like, we're all one sport. Basketball doesn't know a gender. I get it. But like the women's side, you have to know people that play in your sport. You know what I'm saying too? And because now I look at it as, how are those 8 through 13 or 8 through 17 year olds going to want to watch you if you don't even watch it and you're not even passionate about it? So that's for me what I think the most thing is. And then embrace the fact that it's the women's game, and I think there's a stigma to that. Unfortunately, I saw how I think it was Nneka Ogwumike talked about how she was mad that somebody said women should lower the rim because people should be dunking more, and that was a slap in the face. Like, so because I am athletic and I can do all these things below the rim, just because I can't dunk, that makes the game not watchable. Then I don't want you watching the game.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? I don't want you watching the game then if that's all you care about. So I think just helping people understand like how hard the women's basketball game, the women's game is. It's actually a lot harder than I think the men's game is, because men only rely on their athleticism. Women have both strength, athleticism, and intelligence. And so not very many men's teams have all three of those. And so I think just big up in the three things that the women's games provides. I think that's where you got to do it. So I think that's part of some of the stuff. And just keep going out there and being fearless. Play anybody, you know what I mean? Play men, play women.
Yes, I mean, I love playing in pickup games, period, whether that's male or female, but I've been to a few all girls open gyms and it's so much fun just to like enjoy the game with other females and just like feel like you're part of something.
Yeah, there's so many. I've been doing it a while, and I've been seeing, especially a lot of coaches. I'm all for men coaching. You know what I mean? I think it's great. But I definitely believe that there is something to having a woman being able to show that not only she can coach, but coach better. You know what I mean? And being able to relate. I think it's very important, like I said, for young people to see women in power. And so I've said it plenty of times. I don't mind being an assistant coach, for a women's game. In fact, that's, I think, a better role in some instances for men. I mean, so to support, the women, I think that's the directive that needs to happen. And so all for it. I love it. And yeah, I hope that it can happen more, to be honest.
Most definitely. And so, how would you define the word success?
How do I define the word success? So, in short, I would say doing what you love. And, you know, I, you can build off of that. But I really think it's that. For me personally, I am a success story just because when I'm doing what I love, but I've overcame a lot of odds. And so I really believe that I am a success story, regardless of accolades, clout, monetary, people who know me, like outside of any of that stuff, like I'm a success. And so like when you become self-aware of that, like it really, really makes the journey that much better. You embrace everything that comes with it, but that's what I would say is doing what you love. Because not many people are doing what they love. A lot of people are doing what they have to do. And that's the part that I wish everybody had a chance to do, is doing what they love, and so they can support themselves, and if they have a family, support their family. by doing that. I think that's the ultimate. That's what
Right.
success is.
And lastly, what advice do you have for listeners that might be looking to pursue basketball?
For pursuing basketball, like so, get in the game, you know, because you love it. It's we all have a reason why
Mhm.
we start it, but really get into the game because you love it. There's so much more to basketball than just putting a ball in the basket. If you think about it, there's only two baskets and a ball. Like it's not more complicated than that, but it's the 10 people on each team and the five people that are playing and the two referees and the scorers table. Like all these are human beings that are contributing to
Mhm.
the actual experience. And if you take a second to look back and really embrace all of that and just look like, man, this is really cool that I'm in an environment where people want to watch me try to excel to put the ball in the basket as many times as I can, then you'll really enjoy it. And so advice that I have is, enjoy it, like actually love it, find the love for it, find the one thing that you like really passionate about with it and just really excel at that and hold on to that passion regardless of outcome of wins or losses. Um, that would be my advice. And then my second thing that has to be more like basketball related is work on something every day. It doesn't have to be everything you work on, but work on one thing every day. And if you take that, yeah, you're going to be very, very, very happy on the other side of it. Unfortunately, that's what happened with me. I just choose one thing to work on myself every day and I've gotten better over the years. And you gotta think you stack up 32 years of working on yourself every single day, like you're gonna know quite a bit and have experienced quite a bit. So the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So I kind of do the same exact thing. Just try to work on something every day to make myself a little bit better. So that would be my
Yeah.
advice.
Okay, that was it. Thank you so much for being on today.
No, no problem.